Humanities Alert Nation here. We have a very exciting lecture over books 16 and 17. I'm your host, Drew Reynolds. Without any further ado, let's get right into the book.
Question we will be talking about, or the first lines we will be talking about, starts in book 16, lines 13 through 19. The question is, who was very emotional when Telemachus came into the lodge, and why was he so emotional? Eumaeus, or the loyal swineherd, was the one who was being very emotional when he saw Telemachus enter the lodge. And why was he so emotional? He was very emotional because Eumaeus is very, very good friends with Odysseus, and I'm thinking he thinks of Telemachus as almost a son, and because he's known him for so long, and this is the first time he's seen him since his voyage to find his father. So the second question we'll be talking about is, who is Homer comparing Eumaeus to in his simile, and why does this foreshadow? So this will be in lines 20 to 35, a couple lines down. And the simile is, as a father, brimming with love, welcomes home his darling only son in a warm embrace. What pain he's borne for him and him alone, home now in the 10th year from far abroad. So the loyal swineherd hugged the beaming prince. And that's the end of the simile. So, he is comparing Eumaeus to Odysseus because he is saying that Eumaeus is. He's comparing them because it's almost comparing Eumaeus and Telemachus to Odysseus and Telemachus, and this foreshadows because Odysseus will welcome home his son in a warm embrace when he finally tells him that he is home, when he finally tells Telemachus. The next question will be in lines 111 through 113. And the question is, who is talking in these lines, and how does this show irony? Odysseus is talking in these lines, but this is before he tells Telemachus that he is his father. And the lines are, would I were young as you to match my spirit now, or I were the son of great Odysseus, or the king himself, returning from all his roving. There's still room for hope. And that shows a great amount of irony because he is great Odysseus. He is the king of. He is Odysseus, and he is just talking like in first person almost, but Telemachus doesn't know that. So that is all.
How's it going? Quinn from Humanities Alert here, back again, bringing you a second part of book 16, lines 215 through 553. So let's get right back into the book. Okay, so the first section is lines 215 through 250, called Telemachus Reunites with His Father. The first key point for this section is, what is Telemachus' reaction upon seeing his father, and why do you think he reacts this way? Well, Telemachus' first reaction upon seeing his father is just utter disbelief and just shocked that his father is actually home for once. And I think the reason he reacts this way is he can't quite cope with the fact that after him, from being an infant all the way to being, 18, 19 now, and just for the first time seeing his father after infancy is kind of interesting. I mean, he can't really handle this very well. And another thing, I think this is finally, after all these rumors of his father finally coming home, these rumors have finally come to fruition, and he's actually here. The next point or the next section are lines 255 through 270, and this is called Telemachus' questioning. Now, this is kind of an extension off of key point 1, this is key point 2, and it is labeled Telemachus' questioning. The reason being that Telemachus begins to ask Odysseus about his journey back to Ithaca, and the reason of this being is you see a common theme throughout the Odyssey of people in disguise not quite revealing their true selves until later down the line after meeting a new character, which in this case is you get another example of, like as in Odysseus with the Cyclops, obviously telling him his name was Nobody, and again with Athena. Athena dressing up as multiple different people already and also disguising Odysseus multiple times. And when they got back to Ithaca, Odysseus somewhat telling a little false tale to Athena to prove that he still had his wits and making sure this wasn't a trap. And I think this is what Telemachus is doing, is making sure it's not a trap from the suitors or the gods just being cruel to him for no reason, and that it's actually his father. Now, the third point is the third section, I believe, is lines 402 through 435. It's called the Suitor's Plan. Now, the Suitor's Plan is now that Telemachus has returned, their plan is to kill Telemachus with no one noticing, just slaughtering him in the middle of the night as quickly as possible. And then after that, they're saying they're going to divide up all the shares of his resources or what he has in his house left. And then after that, they leave the castle to Penelope, or Odysseus' wife, and whoever she picks as her new husband, to rule the land of Ithaca. Now, this is quite a pivotal point in the plot, just because of the sheer fact that Telemachus has been openly housing all these suitors with their large amount, after what we've been told by the book, this large amount of suitors, and it's very interesting. After greeting them with open arms almost for so many years, now they're turning their back on him and trying to kill him for this power position in Ithaca. And I think it's that overwhelming greed that has to be cured by Odysseus coming back to the polis. That's kind of corrupting the polis, even though he is home. It's not saved. It's this overwhelming greed that still takes the polis to a negative state, although he is back from his 10-year journey. This concludes my section of Book 16. Let's go on to Book 17 with Drew Reynolds. So let's get right back into the book.
Starting off Book 17, I'm Drew Reynolds, and as early as line 1, we see some very important poetic themes here. So throughout the book, we learn about dawn being described as having rosy red fingers that just sprawl across the land and beautify the landscape. And I feel like this figurative language contributes thematically to the epic in two ways. One, it shows that time is passing and that this is a very vast odyssey that Odysseus is undertaking. And secondly, the feminine shows to inspire Odysseus every day, and as soon as the morning rises, he has a new task to accomplish. So later, Telemachus comes home, and this is around lines 31 to 44. And what we see here is, again, the feminine. And the first person to see him was Eurylicia, his old nurse. And tears spring to her eyes, and she rushes to him. And the other maids all flock around him. And they hug him warmly and kiss his head and shoulders. And here again, we see the feminine committing to the comedic nature of the epic, as they show to just create this strong bond between the individuals and the greater polis. Much later in the chapter, lines 254 through 266, we go back to Odysseus and his adventure, and we see him on the street, disguised as a beggar. And basically, the goat herd comes by and shows him no respect, and straight up kicks the king. And Odysseus, very Odysseus-like, is able to keep his cool and not lash out, but rather just takes the hit and plans his revenge for later, essentially, and manages to stay calm under this rather grueling um, task that he needs to stay calm in order to eventually restore the polis.
In book 17, lines 221 through 452, there are three key questions. The first one is, what does Odysseus do to the goat herd, and how does this show his character has grown from when he was with the Cyclops? So when the goat herd notices Odysseus, who is disguised as a beggar, of course, he begins to make fun of and taunt Odysseus. But he shows great self-control of resisting the urge to beat him, which is said in lines 257 through 260, which is, Odysseus was torn. Should he wield this with his staff and beat the scoundrel senseless, or hoist him by the midriff and split his skull on the rocks? He steeled himself instead, his mind in full control. So this shows how his character has grown back with the encounter with the Cyclops, because when the Cyclops began insulting him, Odysseus got very egocentric and started taunting him, even saying his name, which led to all these events. The second key question is, what happens when Argos notices Odysseus, and how does this show Odysseus' extent to stay hidden? So in lines 217 through 220, it says, a dog that lay there lifted up his muzzle, pricked his ears. It was Argos, long enduring Odysseus' dog. So basically, Argos was the only one to notice who Odysseus was through his disguise as a beggar. This shows his extent to stay hidden, because he obviously wanted to go up to his dog and meet with him, because it has been over 20 years since they met, which is shown when he when it said Odysseus glanced to the side and flicked away a tear, hiding it away from the swineherd, which is in lines 334 and 335. The third key question is, what does Antinous do to Odysseus, and how does Xenia justify the fact that the suitors are going to be killed? When Odysseus is brought into the household, Antinous starts taunting him, being a fool, since he was being a bad guest. He was violating the concept of Xenia, and the gods would turn a blind eye to those that disobeyed Xenia, evident when Odysseus blinds the Cyclops for eating his men, because all the gods didn't care except for Poseidon, but because the Cyclops was his son.
Go over part of book 17, starting with the suitor's kindness to Odysseus. How do the suitors treat Odysseus, the beggar, and how does that, despite this, the suitors are all fated to die, convey the importance of right versus wrong in the Greek culture. So Odysseus goes to the group of suitors to separate right from wrong, and Athena seconds this idea, and she's kind of supports justice and law. So all of them except for Antinous, who's kind of like the worst of all the suitors, except him, they all give Odysseus food. Quote, but as for the rest, all gave to the beggar, filled his sack with handouts, bread, and meat. So, however, despite doing this, the suitor's previous action of trashing Odysseus' household, that action kind of outweighs this good act. So this shows the how the wrong action kind of casts a shadow over the smaller right action that the suitors perform. The second section, lines 510 through 529, the beggar being Odysseus' tolerance. So right here, Antinous again he quote, with that he seized the stool and hurled it square in the back. It struck Odysseus just under the right shoulder, but he stood up against it, steady as a rock, unstaggered. So here, Antinous is again being a jerk to Odysseus. Of course, he doesn't realize that it is Odysseus. He just thinks that it's a beggar. So, despite this, Odysseus just remains strong, and he doesn't do anything to Antinous. So this shows self-restraint shows honor and restoration of oikos, the home, and that restoration has to be very honorable in a way. So this is not the time to stand up and kill Antinous. And we know that, even though we know that all the suitors are fated to die anyway, this is just all in timeliness and honor. The third section, the swineherd's joy. This is at the end of book 17. The swineherd sat down on his polished stool, and indulging now in the joys of dance and song. So he's very happy when Telemachus tells him that Odysseus has the help of the gods and is going to save Ithaca from the suitors. And this shows trust placed into the gods, that all the people, for example, a common person like this swineherd, trust in what the gods will do in the people's interest. So although this seems to be unlikely that Odysseus has survived all this time, when Telemachus talks about the gods in this instance, the swineherd all of a sudden is overjoyed. And that wraps up the end of book 17.